Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Folks, I apologize for having to give this speech to you right in the middle of balloting because I know what you're concerned about, and I am too, and that's what's going to happen in the next 30 to 45 minutes. But if you'll bear with me, I've got some news for you. I've got great news for you today. Hillary Rodham Clinton is not the President of the United States of America. Last year, in this meeting, I asked you one thing to do. You were fussing about rules, you were fussing about procedure, and you were trying to decide on the delegates to go to Cleveland. And I asked you then, do all the infighting you want that afternoon, but come that night, leave Augusta united. And that's exactly what you did. And because you did that, we elected Donald J. Trump as President of the United States. Thank you for that. I'm honored to be here. I'm humbled to be one of the 2 U.S. senators from Georgia. I take that very seriously. It's a sobering responsibility, and I have opportunities to be humbled every day in Washington, going on the floor of the United States Senate. The other night, we've been keeping the Senate open 24 hours a day, trying to fight the Democrats to get these confirmations done. And one night I had to preside from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was putting my tie on to go back in there, and I looked over at my wife, shook my head, and I said, in your wildest dream, did you ever imagine we'd be in the United States Senate? My wife rolled over and looked at him. I think she was still half asleep. She said, honey, you were never in my wildest dream. In 2002, you elected the first Republican governor in 135 years, and we haven't stopped since then. In 2004, you helped create the wave that sent an outsider and a businessman from Georgia to the United States Senate. And in 2016, you kept pushing that wave to send another outsider and businessman to the White House. And we aren't stopping there. Thank you very much for doing both of those things. I think they're both very important. Let's be very clear today. We're in a war for the future of our country. In the last 100 years, we've had 3 political supermajorities, all Democrat. The first gave us a New Deal, the second the Great Society, and the third Dodd-Frank and Obamacare. And I'm just a business guy, but I can put at the feet of those 3 supermajorities most of the responsibility for this financial catastrophe Barack Obama has left us. And the irony, after spending trillions of dollars in the last 100 years behind those sweeping progressive programs, they all failed. They failed the very people that they claim to champion. The great progressive experiment of the 20th century hopefully is coming to an end because it has failed. Despite all of that, the federal government continues just to explode in size. Just in the last 2 presidential terms, 1 Republican, 1 Democrat. Since 2000, our federal government has grown from $2.4 trillion, these are constant dollars, to $3.9 trillion last year. Folks, we can't afford that any longer. At the same time, social debate is based on a belief system. I get that. But when you're talking about an economic debate, it should be based on facts. And here are the facts. After the last 100 years, particularly after doubling down in the last 8 years, the Social Security and Medicare trust funds will go to zero in 15 short years. The U.S. Postal Service is losing $1 billion a year. The VA is a disaster. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are bankrupt. Dodd-Frank has shut down lending in small and regional banks, sucking $2 trillion out of this economy. Obamacare is failing under its own weight and causing millions of people to lose their insurance between now and the next year. We've experienced the weakest recovery in 70 years. We have the lowest workforce participation rate since Jimmy Carter was president. And maybe worst of all, in the last 8 years under Barack Obama, we allowed 4 million women to fall into poverty under these sweeping progressive programs. They failed. And lastly, the worst one of all, the Great Society's war on poverty. We all wanted to help eliminate poverty in the United States. Do you know that the poverty rate today, after spending trillions of dollars behind the Great War on Poverty, is exactly the same as it was in the mid-60s when the Great Society was signed into law? These programs have failed. The Democrats' big government agenda has failed, and we've got to educate voters. This is not about the latest shiny object that the media waves in front of our nose every day. This is a battle against not Donald Trump's tweets. This is about Democratic failure. But it's not good enough to just talk about Democratic failure. We've got to have a better plan, and we do. The conservative values that brought you here today that we all believe in. The problem is we don't argue those values enough with the other side, and certainly not with the people in the middle. But here's the good news. The pendulum is actually swinging our way, at least at the state level. Today, 70% of state legislatures in the United States are Republican. 70% of all governors in the United States are Republican. That's not an accident, folks. When government is closest to the American people choose conservative values and focus on results. If we can extend that to Washington, we have a moment of opportunity. I've been talking about this for 4 years. We have a moment of opportunity that could make the next 50 to 100 years, make the last 70-year economic miracle pale in comparison. But we've got to fight for our values. We've given in too easily in Washington. This year, we've already seen the potential of this opportunity when we have a leader. When President Trump was sworn in, he laid out his priorities for this year. And job one was getting the economy going and putting people back to work. Number one, he directed Congress to solve this crisis called Obamacare. Y'all, the House has passed it, now it's up to the Senate, but let's be very clear today. Obamacare has failed, and it's the Democrats' fault, not ours. The Democrats failed. This is their program. Number two, President Trump, along with the U.S. Senate, has embarked on the largest recall of onerous regulations in U.S. history. Third, we've laid out priorities to revamp this archaic tax system and make America competitive with the rest of the world again. And lastly, I'm very proud to tell you today that our president did what he said he was going to do. He nominated somebody for the Supreme Court. The United States Republican Senate stood up to the filibuster, and we got Neil Gorsuch confirmed to the United States Supreme Court. This is a president that's doing exactly what he said he would do. He has reestablished American support for Israel, y'all. He has reengaged with the world leaders to make sure they know what our national interests are. How about that for a refreshing start? And lastly, just this week, I could go on with a long list of what he's already done in the first 120 days, but we don't have time for that. But just this week, he had the guts to pull us out of the Paris Accord. He's moving at a business pace, not a bureaucratic pace. And you know what? People are listening. Small business optimism is at a 10-year high. Consumer confidence is at a 17-year high. And manufacturer optimism hasn't been this high in 20 years. President Trump is delivering results. But you know what? We got to back him up. I was really disappointed last night. I didn't hear one speech talk about Donald Trump last night. I've heard it today, and I'm really proud of these people today. We've got to get behind. This is the guy we fought for. Why are we debating about his tweets? This is a guy that can help lead us and get this thing turned around. After 100 years of progressive programs, and certainly 8 years of Barack Obama, this is definitely a turnaround. Turnarounds are messy. Turnarounds take time. Turnarounds break eggs. But a successful turnaround always has to have a leader pointing the way to a new direction. And that's exactly what we have right now. Washington doesn't know what to do with him. Washington doesn't know what to do with me. And that's just fine with you and me. If that ever changes, you come find me and kick me right here. In response to this new direction, the left has actually gone further to the left. They're led by a new gang of four: Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi. We remember the last gang of four in China. It didn't end well for them, and this won't end well for those guys either. They're doubling down, and they're going to continue to fail, but only if we succeed. We have a great habit of grasping defeat right out of the jaws of victory. And we're in it again. We've got a majority in the House. We've got a thin majority in the Senate. We've got the White House. It's our turn to govern. Let's stop saying no, and let's lead this country to a better way. The only solution the left has is more intervention, bigger government, more spending, more debt, more dependency, and yes, less freedom. They're out of ideas, the liberals. So let's be absolutely clear today. The progressive social policies of this new Gang of Four have failed, not just in America. Look at Europe. We don't have to experiment again. These things have been tried for the last 50 and 100 years. We know they fail. Across the country, though, liberals are doing all they can to tear down any Republican who is working with President Trump to get things done. Even right here in Georgia, we see evidence of that. Billboards, demonstrations backed by billionaire funds. Make no mistake, this is an ideological war for the future of our republic. We can't wait until next year to get engaged. Changing the direction of our country is an all-hands-on-deck mission. We need you now. We have to match their determination at every single turn. We've defaulted for far too long. Here in Georgia, we've got a lot of work to do. You're in the middle of a very critical election, electing your next chairman. I'm not going to have a lot to say about that except that we've got 4 candidates and any one of them will do a fantastic job leading this group. The one thing I will ask you today is the same thing I asked last year. Get in here and fight hard this afternoon, and tonight be united behind whoever comes out on top. Just like in my race in 2014, when we asked you to not let Harry Reid have one more vote in the United States Senate, in 17 short days, we have to get Karen Handel to the United States House of Representatives and make darn sure that Nancy Pelosi doesn't get one more vote in the House of Representatives. We also have something called a governor's race, and I have other good news for you today. I am not running for governor of the state of Georgia. Don't clap too loud. It makes me wonder about what you're clapping about. But you elected me to go to Washington and get a job done, and I'm not done. I take that very seriously. We have 2 Republican governors back. We've had 2 Republican governors back to back. And Georgia today, for the 4th consecutive year, is the best place in the country in which to do business. That's not an accident, y'all. It takes time. It takes effort. It takes commitment. It takes principles that actually work. And we're proving that right here in local government. But on a federal level, 2017 and 18 is a probation period, not a mandate. We have a Republican margin in the House, majority in the House, a thin one in the Senate, and we have a Republican in the White House. You know, the Democrats have had that 11 times in our history, and we've only had it 3? Explain that one to me. If you believe our values, then you cannot explain to me why they've had that 11 times, and we've only had it 3 times. But this is our opportunity to change that. The last time we had it, though, was between 2002 and 2006, and we didn't show up very well. Where was our health care reform? Where was our tax policy change? Where was our energy policy? And oh, by the way, we added $4 trillion to a $6 trillion debt. God help us if we do that again. We cannot allow that to happen again. But you know, if we unite as a party, this is our opportunity. We can end the crushing regulations that have sucked the very life out of our free enterprise system. We have the opportunity right now, because we all held the line in the last couple of years. We have 128 federal and circuit judge openings that we can nominate and confirm with 51 votes in the United States Senate. And we plan to do just that. We can finally put an end to the insanity called sanctuary cities. And yes, folks, finally secure our borders. The other crisis that we've got to solve is the national debt crisis, and we can do that. The president, just in his current budget that he just released 2 weeks ago, talks about a long-term solution for our debt crisis. He wants to rebuild our military and lead again in the world. And yes, God willing, and with the leadership of this president, we can finally, once and for all, potentially bring term limits to the United States Senate and the United States House of Representatives. Winston Churchill once said, "It's not enough to tell me that you're doing the best you can. You got to tell me you're doing everything that's necessary." My dad was in London during the Blitz. He was in Europe after that. He reminded me of that quote before he died, long before I ever thought about this. He asked those people to do more than they could even believe they could do. That's what I'm asking of you today. This isn't going to happen without you. We can fix the broken system in Washington, but we have to do what's absolutely necessary. We can get back to our founding principles, but guys, these aren't just words. We have to live this, explain it, sell people on it, and get them convinced that our way is better. And listen to this. This is how simple it is. Economic opportunity, fiscal responsibility, limited government, individual liberty. What do they want? Bigger government, less liberty, more intervention, more control, and more entitlement. We have to get this done for our children and our children's children. The future of our republic is at stake. God bless you for being here today. God bless you for what you're doing. God bless Georgia, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.